So I guess I better make my first video topic. Um, Guys, I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm an amateur and I have no equipment or anything. I'm just a girl talking on a channel using my laptop mic. So I don't have a muffler or anything. And I'm talking when my family's out and I'm alone so that there's relatively no interruptions or weird noises going on. So let's start with my first topic. I have bipolar disorder. So, when I was 6 years old, my parents divorced, and my dad left, and I was grown. I grew up with my mom and my sister, and things were good there. But when I was 6 years old, I considered hanging myself. Yeah, I know, pretty dark thoughts for a 6 year old. But I really believe that I was the cause of my parents' divorce and the unhappiness that ensued after the divorce. So I thought that by removing myself out of the picture, my parents would be so sad they would get back together and take care of my sister. Well, obviously, that was a stupid thought, and I didn't go through with killing myself. And I lived with severe depression and anxiety and panic attacks for my entire life. I literally was bullied. I was bullied in elementary school, middle school, and high school. I was a quiet, shy introvert. I rarely spoke. I had no friends. And I was literally always bullied. In fact, I was bullied so badly in elementary school that the principal had to issue a restraining order against two girls who would literally consistently harass me and would pin me up against walls after school and threaten to kill me. And then in middle school, I was so badly bullied by two other girls that I was seeing a counselor, and also because my dad was sexually harassing me at the time. There was a lot of crap going on. And then, right when I thought I was going to escape it, freshman year of high school came, and my grandpa passed away during the summer very unexpectedly. And then my dad discovered he had stage 2 cancer, and the cancer was an extremely rare form. It was some sort of tissue cancer. And he had a tumor in his leg that was pressing up against major arteries. So they couldn't operate on it until they had given him a ton of radiation. And so, of course, that really messed him up. And we weren't sure he was going to make it. But he did, and he's still alive to this day. And the cancer has not returned. So a lot of crap has happened in my life. You know, I got into high school and I just got really cynical and I hated everybody, including my own family and myself most of all. And then actually at the end of 2011, I met my fiance. He was my first boyfriend and then my first and only fiance, obviously. Um, yeah, that was a huge turning point in my life, but I still suffered from depression and anxiety so much. And it wasn't until my freshman year of college that I just lost it because I was bullied in college as well. So I had been bullied by girls in elementary school, in middle school, in high school, and then in college. And by the time that I got into college and my roommate was bullying me and stealing my stuff and writing letters home to her, she literally left a letter on her desk to her parents one time talking about how much she hated me. And it was at that point that I finally lost it. And I texted the suicide hotline and I was just ready to kill myself. I was ready to go fling myself off the balcony of the library on campus. So I was taken home that day. It was actually it was the midterm week. Isn't that fantastic? And I was taken to the hospital and I was put on medication. I was put on Prozac. And I had been avoiding medication for up to that point for over 10 years because I had been suffering from panic attacks since I was in the 5th grade to the point where I would pass out and lose my taste buds and lose my sight and lose my hearing and my mobility in my arms, and I would lose circulation. Like my panic attacks were severe and only were getting worse and more frequent. So this was kind of the last straw for me, and I finally gave in and went on medication. Now, I'm a Christian. First and foremost, I am a Christian. And my church members were not being helpful with what I was going through. In fact, I was told that I was possessed by a demon. I was not right with God. I was being punished for some sort of secret sin because I had mental illness. And it took so much courage on both my part and my mom's part to finally just break away from that and go put me on medication and for me to start therapy. Actually, I had to get physical therapy because my anxiety had literally wrenched the muscles around my lungs and back so tightly that I developed asthma. Like, I'm not even kidding. This is how bad my panic attacks were. They caused my muscles to go under so much stress that I literally was not able to breathe. Um, so I had to get physical therapy to loosen my muscles. And to this day, I've been doing really great. I run every day. I love running. I still suffer from some breathing. Yeah, I just yawned. Honestly, guys, I'm gonna tell you, I'm super real. I really don't know how to edit. I suck. I'm just doing this for my own benefit and to anyone who will listen. So anyway, I, love running and I still have some breathing problems, but I enjoy what I do. And so finally, about a year passed and the Prozac stopped working. And I started to have panic attacks again and got really suicidal. So they put me on a secondary antidepressant. I actually forget the name of it now, but I was on a second antidepressant for about a year. And then again, it stopped working. So I had to reevaluate everything. And actually, in early 2017, so early last year, I was texting with the crisis text line and was going to kill myself. And the police showed up to my house, and my mom wasn't home. My sister was, and my sister was like completely freaked out as to why the police were there. And they actually contacted my mom, and she came home. And the police officer that was there recommended that I see this counselor that his son had been seeing. And so he gave us her information. Well, interestingly enough, this counselor he gave us the information to was one that we had already considered for me to go to. But this counselor did not want to accept me because she and my mom had a business relationship. And she did not feel that it would be good for their business relationship if she started seeing me. But because of what happened that night, she took me immediately. So I've been seeing this counselor for almost a year now. And over the time that we've been doing therapy together, she's discovered that she thought that my diagnosis. So when I was given medication back in my freshman year of college, I had not had a formal diagnosis. I had been told from fifth grade that I just had anxiety. And then people were saying, oh, she just has depression. But then finally, when I went on medication and started to undergo more doctor visits and whatnot, I was diagnosed with chronic major depressive disorder. And this was the label I carried around with myself until last year, 2017. My counselor started to notice patterns in my familial history and especially with my father. So she asked me to do a mood tracker. So I did this mood tracker for quite a few months, and she began to ask me questions about bipolar disorder. And I said, actually, now that I think about it, bipolar disorder runs in my family. Like, this hadn't occurred to me until now, because first of all, I was too young previously to understand anything about like formal names of mental illnesses. And I didn't know and had no comfortability asking my family members about their possible mental illnesses. Well, come to find after some questioning and digging, bipolar disorder runs in my family, and it's affected generation after generation. Either 2 or 3 people get it in the generation or whatnot. Well, my father has bipolar disorder. He's not formally diagnosed because he refuses to see psychiatrists or psychologists because he's quite literally OCD and very, very secretive. He believes that everyone's out to get him. He's kind of paranoid. And mind you, this was the guy that was sexually harassing me and was addicted to porn as a Christian pastor. He's no longer a pastor, and I'm still a Christian, but I have a lot of distrust toward people who watch pornography and things like that nowadays. And it's interesting that many Christians are the ones that watch pornography. Anyway, that's another tangent, another story for another day. Today's topic is bipolar disorder. So anyway, I have been formally re-diagnosed with bipolar disorder. According to my counselor, I'm type 3 bipolar disorder, which is the most mild form of bipolar disorder, but it's one that you won't find any information on. So I technically classify myself as bipolar type 2. It's the less severe form of bipolar 1 disorder, which has a lot more manic episodes, which is a lot more elevated highs and periods of feeling like you don't need to sleep and that you're kind of invincible. Type 2 has more of the depressive side of bipolar disorder. I suffer from a lot of depression, a lot of exhaustion, and a lot of anxiety. I've started to learn more about this psychological term called catastrophizing, which I didn't believe was an actual word until recently. But I deal with this thing called catastrophizing, which is kind of this like offshoot of perfectionism and OCD, which my father has. And it's basically like if you make one little mistake, you start to think that you are literally just a screw up and are worthless and can do nothing right. And you start to blow everything out of proportion. You start to make like people's comments into something about you. You start to believe that everyone thinks that you're horrible. It kind of is just like a form of paranoia, and it's really detrimental. So I've been working through some ways to lower my levels of catastrophizing and being anxious, and it started to work, and I'm really grateful for that. But my main point today is that people are really pissy about bipolar disorder and mental illness in general. Mental illness is something that many people believe is created just so people feel better about themselves. Like if you'll notice, a lot of quote unquote snowflakes claim they have some sort of mental illness. And depression itself is not a mental illness. Anxiety itself is not a mental illness. You need to go get formally diagnosed if you have like major depression disorder, depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, or an anxiety disorder. For you to just say, I have depression or anxiety, therefore I have a mental illness, is extremely misleading and very harmful to those who actually have mental illness. And I hate people who perpetuate the stigma attached to mental illness, that people with mental illness are just special snowflakes, or they're what do they call it? First world problems, and they're white people problems. And honestly, I just hate that. It's so stupid. People with mental illness are struggling with an actual problem in their brain. Like my brain is actually physically and visually different from quote unquote normal people's brains. There is a significant difference between a person with a mental illness's brain and a person who does not have mental illness's brain. If you look at ADHD brains or autistic brains, Down syndrome brains, there is a significant difference between normal brains and those with mental illness or other illnesses or disorders. And people need to stop claiming that mental illness is made up. It's not that it's just a modern problem. Yes, the numbers are rising every year in America. It's especially prominent in America. But mental illness has always existed. And it's just now being really explored and opened as a conversation because people are coming forth with it after years of being kept in the dark. And quite frankly, earlier in the centuries and decades, there was this thing called mental institutions and mental hospitals. And if you were dealing with a mental illness, You were locked up, experimented on, raped, and other things. There's literally books on this subject about the mistreatment of people with mental illness. And nowadays, finally, legislation and laws are being issued so that people with these kind of disorders and mental illnesses can have compensation and fairness in the workplace, in schools. I actually have accommodations at my school because there's sometimes where I just can't make it out of bed and I just can't make it to school because I'm too nervous to drive or I just feel like I can't do it. And I'm a straight A student, okay? I'm not a slacker. I'm not lazy. I'm not hiding behind some sort of fake label to make myself feel better or to make people have sympathy for me. Quite frankly, I really hate when people say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Like, "Oh, like really? That sucks." It's like, "No shit, man." Like, I really don't like having a mental illness. And I wish I didn't have it, but literally it runs in my family. Bipolar disorder is a hereditary illness that has no cure. It is incurable, which is why I'm on medication and people act like that's the devil. So that's a little bit about me and a little bit of a first kind of taste rant of what I'll be doing in the future. So there you go. Have a great day, guys.